Welcome everybody. This is a special show that we're putting together for the LCE members. It's concerning a lot of your questions on blood. So today what Andrew and I are going to be focusing on for this section is purely all the different blood types. Not really the science of it, but what it means to us, metaphysically, spiritually, how the different blood types were created, and what their meaning is, what their gifts are, because each blood type does have a specific reason for being. And Andrew's going to explain to us the history of the different blood types of A, AB, B, 0, 0 minus, 0 plus, or O as some people call it, and RH negative. So do you want to, which blood group would you like to start off with first, Andrew?
Let's start with an understanding of what the technology of blood is. Here on this world, one thing we all share in common is red blood. Where does that come from, that imprintation? That imprintation comes from the planet. It is also how the planet elementally interacts with you as long as you are creating blood in the manifested reality. The heart is the first thing that we are at creation, and the heart needs blood to flow. To do that creation, you have a marrow system that is created, and that marrow system is the membrane into your spiritual contracts. So that membrane in the spiritual contracts creates blood that will have a psychic pheromone that will attract other contractual energies to you, whether it's in positive or negative, doesn't matter.
So when you're talking about the marrow, you're talking about the blood flow and the mitochondria, and you were talking before that that is the key to immortality. So the blood has a huge part in activating the mitochondria through the marrow. Does it matter what blood type, or are you going to explain to us how that affects, how each blood type affects the mitochondria?
So if people that have cancer and they're in a really bad scenario, sometimes they have blood marrow transplants or bone marrow. What it is they drill into your feet or your femur, your hip, or someplace where there's a lot of marrow, and then they'll extract cells and marrow from a person and then insert it into another person, like seeding a ground. So you're producing a blood that is not having a pathogen in it or something that the cancer is already attached to, because once the cancer gets into the marrow, it is creating more cancerous blood. So when somebody who is a universal giver, like an O blood, they can give blood to anyone else or marrow to anyone else to continue growth life if that life force has lost the ability to create its own life force blood.
Right.
Okay? So that's the basic interaction. As long as there's red blood, you can continue life force. It really doesn't matter if it's a mouse or a horse or a human being. There is a spark of life force in that blood, in that creation from the marrow that's linked to the soul spark that's in that technology of that skin suit. When we look at other types of blood, we look at like letter A or letter B. That means you are coming in the incarnation grid or the reincarnation grid. And it does not mean you are positive or negative. That just means in your blood frequency is the incarnation grid and reincarnation grid choice. So if you have someone that is just A, that means they're in the incarnation process. Somebody that is just B is solely in the reincarnation process. And someone who is AB is both at the same time. Someone who is O, they are the universal giver, we can only receive from other O-type personalities. They are the ones, their realities are most influenced by those that are A or B. Everything is polarity, left or right of what? Center of the ability to give to all and receive from all. And that is the difference between A and B. The type of soul that comes in will look at the blood of the lineage and determine if that psychic pheromone that the blood's going to create, is it alterable? Is there technology within the DNA skin suit that says I can make that into something else that is far more beneficial than just adhering to the rules of karma? So then we have soul contracts and how they work with the blood. When we do contract revocation, we are clearing from our blood in us right now, in that program blood, how the system can interact with us. When we take contract revocation to a new level and we include it into the marrow, it's what the future blood that's going to be created for us, which is how much spark and soul we're allowing in. When we take a full expression of someone that is A and B, and then there's A and B positive, A and B negative. What that does is the soul frequency of the individual fetus that was coming in through a mother and father came through special spiritual contracts to be both incarnating and reincarnating simultaneously. That means the person has the potential to be mirrored on other timelines by himself or herself, or technology that alters them to make them believe they're on other sides. That is why A and B was instituted into our population many, many thousands of years ago. So there would be a big population of people who could have their memories rapidly altered, and in their unknowingness, they wouldn't know from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime.
So our blood basically then has been manipulated to an extent that you can either, there are specific soul families that are able to create AB so that they're reincarnating, incarnating at the same time.
Through the filter of the archons.
Through the and that's what I'm saying, through the filter of the archons. So basically, it was controlled, and they started to then manipulate the types of blood so that were there more types of blood before?
Oh yeah, there are
about, they shrunk this all now down to just these 4 types that they control.
200 different types of blood.
My
and
goodness.
Different colors of blood too. You have blood that has lots of oxygen, that's crimson red, and then you have a lot of blood that's really dark. There's various hues of red. So can there be blue blood? Yes, there are blue beings. Can there be blue-blooded beings here who can donate to a red-blooded being? The answer is yes, because it's in the DNA that determines if the membrane and cells in mitochondria look at that soul spark of blue and alter it to the right chakra point, because the blood is a transference of psychic energy as much as is the mechanical value of bringing oxygen to the cells.
And that is why also, when we were discussing this earlier, when we were preparing for this show and what information, we discovered also that people who have one certain blood type when they were tested before, several years later, especially when many things have happened or they've done a lot of revocations or whatever it is, their blood type can change. And that's the beauty of this. Some people are fixed in one thing, but you actually can change the blood type, and it does happen. This phenomenon is real.
Also, in multiple personality disorder studies in the 70s and 80s, they discovered that when patients would go long-term from one personality to the other, that their blood types would change, as well as scars in the body appear and disappear.
Yes. So when you have an AB negative or an AB positive, what does the negative and the positive, or in all the blood types, you have the negative and the positive. What does that, I mean, it doesn't mean that we're negative or positive beings. That you mentioned that earlier, but what does that, is that just what science has dictated it to be called?
Correct. That is what science has dictated to call. I can create some metaphors that help us understand the spiritual mechanics of positive versus negative. We are beings of polarity. When we achieve neutrality, that means we have the O blood in us we can give to anyone anytime. And if we want to, let's say, incarnate with a separate experience with people, let's say you and I come together and we're going to have an experience, but I still want to resolve my karma, we can do that together and separate because it's in the nature of the blood to be that multidimensional. And then you have the other someone that's a reincarnator and only is going to work with reincarnating beings until it comes a point in evolution of that being where it becomes AB. And has enough of itself open so that it can learn to be the giver to all. Once again, service to self, service to other, and understanding healing the power of the self. The triad exists within the blood. And the conscious application of the sacred can create imagery at the bone marrow layer that can begin to literally reprogram how your cells function. What is toxic? What isn't toxic? You can give instruction to the blood that says, within every cell that we go, we are going to begin a conscious tax of toxicity and begin to slowly reduce our toxicity level till we are back in some neutral energy environment.
And this is something that I think a lot of people haven't realized, is that when blood is spirit, spirit is blood, and it's all connected. And when you're emanating certain frequencies and when you're doing certain, or really focusing on certain disciplines, the blood types will change accordingly. And also with the health, there are some actual meditations that if your blood is sick, you can actually do specific meditations and the spiritual work and put that intent, frequency, and energy towards your blood. And you can help heal your blood by yourself. It's just the process that you find for yourself that will trigger that, and the intent, and then the understanding of what the blood actually is, and then knowing that you can change it, knowing that anything is possible, because when that becomes a knowingness inside of you, it's very, very easy then to begin to start that process, and you'll start to see a much quicker evolution of what it is you're trying to achieve in the cleanliness of the blood, for example, you'll start to feel the changes and the shifts in you, and it will become more and more of a knowingness. And then soon, at a more advanced stage, people are able to do it like this. So if one point they want to be an absolute neutral, or they're engaging people in the incarnation, reincarnation, they'll be able to emanate the right equations with the specific blood type, so they have a connection to that being. There are a lot of beings that will be doing this at a later stage to help calibrate and integrate all that is.
So there are a bunch of different types of positive and negatives to blood, as well as different factors like RH blood. And I described before RH blood as being portal creators. They're also a closed circuit system of blood. That means their DNA cannot be altered. Let's say you have a scenario where some type of etheric force is coming to trying to alter DNA memories of people in a large population. Well, those that are Rh negative blood, they're constantly reproducing blood that is the original record in it. So if it's changed, it can continuously be replaced.
Oh, so it resets each time to the original, right. Resets each time to the original. Now,
correct.
When you're talking about Rh negative, is that blood type O?
Yes. It can be other types also, because
right.
It is the light spark that's going to determine what type of closed circuitry you're using.
Okay.
Like you could have a light spark that could come into a B negative, and for a short period of time the blue frequency of light will function through them. Rh negative is specifically in the infrared portal frequency. Right. When you're dealing with the infrared densities of energy, that gives it the most consistent power, because we are in an infrared overload world.
And this is also when we had Debbie on the show, and hopefully she'll be able to come and join us quite soon. But when we had Debbie on the show, she's also Rh negative, and how she's used the skill, and that was one of the questions that you had. How can we actually use the skills of our blood type? Like if you are an Rh negative, how can you use this gift of this closed circuitry to help humanity, help yourself, help this planet? And what Debbie does is she does this past life transgression, and she also does the progression into the future lives and cells. And her gift of being able to hold that closed circuitry enables you to connect with other parts of yourself, and she is able to hold that portal clear for you. That circuit is closed, so nothing else that is trying to influence it at that time can actually go through. That is one of the benefits, that if you do have that active blood type at this moment, and you're wishing to engage in the gifts of this type of blood, that is one of the great things to do. Also, portal creations for other people, creating portals and activating and reactivating them or closing them. For those things, you need a little bit more training, but this is all within your scope and sphere, and it should be really easy for you guys to be able to hold that focus a lot more than other people. You won't have to use so much of your photonic light energy to hold that space, because it is already done. It is already the law in the universe.
In ancient times past, blood magic has been practiced for both positive, negative throughout time immemorial. Women go through a menstrual cycle in which they bleed. Blood is so alchemically important to who we are that when we create a conscious strategy of sacredness, where we know that, let's say, our liver is filtering a lot of bad stuff out of the blood, we can design a meditation that goes into the core of our marrow, that gives specific instructions to the next iteration of blood. About every 56 days, you'll replace the total blood in your system will be completely replaced. So if you have that relative understanding, you can begin producing good health, preventative health and maintenance through that application of making sacred the amount of blood. Let's say you have lung issues, or you have something else, that you can begin to program that through those meditations where you go into your femurs, your hips, and your bones, and you radiate the words to all of your cell structures to create, because that is the purpose of blood, to help in the conscious manifestation around you by the psychic pheromones that you give out innately, so that elemental beings, ancestral beings, or other energy body beings that are yourself or other beings in this shared reality can come and act as the medium for infinite accomplishment.
I remember when you had a reading a couple of days ago, and the lady that you were reading had AB negative. And she had some very specific skill sets with that blood type. Would you care to elaborate on some of those skill sets? Because that was for the AB negative.
Yeah, for that individual being, she was a mass sensor. So it wasn't really about the blood that gave that to her as much as how the light body was abusing the blood technology.
Right, because yeah, we get into that aspect because everything is indeed totally connected.
Right, because some people's plans, I got the wrong DNA skin suit that doesn't create the right blood. I got definitely the wrong lineage that doesn't have the built-in skills I want. And I don't have all of my own memories. So those three things, so your light body will come in and it will look out at the setup of the skin suit, the blood, and go, what can I abuse to get my needed skill set of this manifestation, of this iteration, of this understanding of how to be fully yourself, even though you're in the wrong skin suit. So blood is where you can begin to reprogram. The next thing is your DNA is your blood also. Within that is the micro version of that expression, because it's the DNA that has all of your memories. And what do you think blood is? A bigger expression or a more micro expression of how memories are going to be flowing through you. So you can have one of those imagery meditations that says the next iteration of blood that's going to be replaced, I'm going to regain my memories. For those of you that can't remember your childhood, or for those of you that can't remember dreams, you can create mantras that begin to resonate with your blood at the highest level, so that when you are going through a sleep and awake, that the blood begins to record.
How do you know you've created a mantra that would resonate to the highest level of your blood?
It's really about how much fun you can give yourself doing it, how much heart-based smile when you're doing it, and not having the sad frowny face while you're meditating.
And when you're clearing the blood, can one imagine, for example, we have the heart and the aortas, and that's where we began, is the heart. Does one then imagine the blood flowing in, and
how about
through
your
the
body?
Heart space we're clearing it, and then it's then going around our whole body and then clearing our whole body. That basically the heart, and emanating from that heart space, that could help clear the blood that then goes to all of your structures, all of your visceral systems, brings the healthy hemoglobins and the oxygen and all of that.
And just like the streamers here, your heart has energetic arteries and veins out into your auric field, into your light bodies also. So you can expand your meditation so that the heart begins to bring some of the rich oxygen of the spiritual world into yours, or take some of the deep blue energy that's in the blood and gives it to the spirit, so it comes back in, and the heart can begin to process different kinds of strains of energy that are beyond just the red physical, because it is the conscious interaction of how the spark soul created a fetus.
And I mentioned you were saying that we have all the different blood types. A lot of people say, well, these guys are blue bloods. There's a lot of controversy behind that. Some also say it's because they ingested a certain type of ingredient that caused their blood to actually turn blue, because they actually became toxic in some form or manner. I believe it came from the silver, wasn't it? From silver?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a concept when people talk about the aristocracy, the people who are living off silver, that they actually got silver poisoning. That's one of the aspects to the blue blood theory. But there's so much more to the blue.
See, there's so much more to the blue blood theory. Remember, I talked about blue-blooded people and personalities. Well, there are those that understand that everything in this planet is technology. So if you are in a consciousness exploration vehicle that is not attached to an astral world, but you're just in observance, and you decide for a long period of no time you're going to observe a piece of metal, and you're going to realize that somebody a long time ago created that metal as technology. How can I use that metal in a world that shares red blood? Well, they all the metals are in their blood at all times. It's the nature of the world works. All elements exist within the blood as it's flowing.
So you create an attraction, a frequency recognition, and that's the calibration. Then you be able to, because you have that attraction to the frequency equation that is similar as the law of attraction, you are able then to entangle it, and then it becomes ergo malleable for you, and therefore it's now a construct for any creation that you wish to, unlimited.
Which then can create a high for the I am presence that has that within its frequency, and then that I am presence says, I need it internally. And once it's internal, you are bringing in the technology of that elemental creation and the original beings that created it, which could have a much deeper expression where it allows blue blood to even exist. Right. You have changed the very fabric of you are. And yes, there are people that have died from that scenario, but there are many people that have lived dozens of years as blue-skinned people. Some people that take
colloidal silver, yeah,
oftentimes have a blue tint because it. What does the silver do? It's antibacterial, antimicrobial. Well, if you have that much silver in your blood, and you can be quite healthy compared to a world that is full of toxics and germs. And using silver overdosing was something that many Templars would use when they go place to place during the plagues.
So what we have basically right now is we have the type A, you have the type B, so you have
incarnation versus reincarnation. Correct.
So you've got those two sets.
Okay.
Then we have the AB.
And then hold on, and they both has a positive and negative to it. It
Yes.
determines in the blood how much pheromone you're putting out. If you're in the negative, you're not producing a pheromone running on programs. If you're in the positive, you're putting out newer pheromones. That's a good way to describe it on both sides, incarnation and reincarnation. So when we move to the A and the B, you are simultaneously both things creating multiple frequencies that can nullify each other, which allows the system to karmically abuse you.
Yeah, so it kind of goes like this, separates, brings back to here, and it's this there. There's the point that the system can then abuse you because there's that gateway.
There's the gateway.
Goes like that.
Yep.
And then it joins, and there's your gateway for those things. And then we have the type A, the type B, minus negative, positive. We have then
Type
the AB,
O,
which is incarnation, reincarnation simultaneously. And then we have the O, which was also created by the multidimensional being so that they could also have their closed circuitry.
Right. So you have different kinds of O, and O is one of the original slave blood types because you could give to anyone and anyone could give to you until they altered O so that there are O's that are just givers but can only receive from other specific type O's who may be Rh negative to allow the closed circuitry to pass from one being to another.
Now here's a question. If we take an Rh negative, and let's say we're doing some kind of an alchemical experiment, okay? And let's say we have a type AB blood, incarnation, reincarnation, and we want to do a Rh negative transfer, because that's so we can send that to them. What are the chances of that person has been actually practicing and wanting to get into that specific equation that would facilitate? If they had a blood transfusion of that, would that help kickstart them?
Because
would that have any effect? Or is it just the emanation from the mitochondria and the photonic light and that equation that depicts then the blood?
If you're looking at alchemy, it's the photonic light equation, yes.
Light, okay.
But no. So when we have bloods in your mixing, like you have the karma that's coming in each blood, the psychic pheromone that's been around for the last 56 days, the energy toxicity of the individual person. So there's no way to answer that question without giving definition to what the two people are.
Indeed.
But if you have two people that come together in photonic light, let's say, are we exchanging blood now? No, but we're exchanging blood aura.
That's right.
We
yes, because we were entangled with each other.
We have entangled enough that yes, are our marrows working together? No, but as a relationship, companionship, friendship grows amongst people, you can. And this is the other subliminal, subversive part of sharing dirty energy underwear. I talk about it all the time, but this is the way we are made up. If we didn't live in such a toxic environment, the energy between us wouldn't be the dirty energy underwear. If we were not practicing spiritual hygiene, it would be this raw creative energy that's going through, or whatever the work type is that's going through, because we are both in the equal co-creation here, and the blood is always in equal co-creation. Let's say her heart rate's a little higher and my heart rate's a little lower. After the conversation goes, they match, as well as the emanations of our magnetic frequencies.
And we also learned that through some of the experiments that HeartMath has been doing, and how far the eminence of the heart in itself goes. And it's really quite interesting when you start to entangle them when describing about the different blood and how the equations fit. I mean, one could explain it when you get to know someone after a while, you start to recognize automatically how they are. You know exactly when you walk in where they're at, you know, what type of mood they're in. And I think that's a similar kind of recognition, understanding of how that concept of the equation would work then in a transferal and a calibration of at the same thing. It's the recognition.
That recognition.
The recognition creates then a form of connection. And then depending on how much intent you put into that connection, you can then emanate on both sides a full connection and then start to share and take each other's aspects onto each other because we're that malleable.
We are that malleable. So one more thing when it comes to blood, blood interacts with oxygen. And when we put ourselves in hyperbaric chambers, we give lots of oxygen to the blood cells and we bloat them. So oxygen therapy in many different ways can be very, very beneficial to assisting people to go and reduce their toxicity at the blood level. On the other hand, when we are at high altitude or low altitude, our blood is technologically functioning different. So we have to be aware that our blood will have more water or less water to it based off of the water that we're intaking, off of the toxicity of our gut. So how spiritual you could be can be completely eliminated by the toxicity in your gut. You know, you could have people that have, you know, entities in their aura that are feeding on your physical blood, like the energy of your blood. Like they could be attached to your hip.
Psychic parasites. I mean, almost,
hooked right into your core or right into your marrow, taking away your future energy.
Oh, and this could also be like those when we talk about people who are psychic or emotional vampires.
Yeah.
Those types of beings. And where as soon as you hit the bands of that being or their aura, all of a sudden you've just got
feeder tubes. Feeder tubes.
You're just done. It's like you, and then you get depressed and everything else. It's like there's all the exchange of your energy and everything else. The thing you get back, because there's always an exchange. There's always an exchange to keep it at that balance. The stuff you get back is the depression, anger,
resentment,
lack of energy,
jealousy, all that other things.
Yeah.
So one final thing that I can say about blood, none of your senses can work without of it. None of your nervous system can work without it. So no matter what ailment you have, if you look at yourself as producing blood every 56 days and the blood that's existing in you, if you create imagery and you create meditations, you will discover a rapid change in your health rapidly when you do it on your own. Without the advice from anyone else, just give your own creativity to your own blood. There you go.
There is no cookie cutter way for this, as we keep saying. Everybody's a different equation. So playing around with some basic points. And also when it comes to helping yourself along when you're working with the metaphysical, on the physical aspect, is working with blood cleansing agents. Garlic's very, very good for that. Sometimes be careful, though, because with some people, if you have too much garlic, it actually creates the opposite effect.
Yep.
And there are some other tonics that you can use that help cleanse the blood. Specific juicing recipes are really good. And then also detoxing. And then there you have hyperbaric chambers, but you also have places around the world which are called oxygen baths.
Yep. As well as medication where you can take that adds oxygen to your blood too.
Ooh, yes. Cell food.
Yeah.
Right there, cell food. But that's not a medication.
Well, no, there's this stuff that's actually produced that has intense amounts of oxygen in micropellets, and when you take it as a pill, it releases it.
Yes, yeah.
All right, everyone, this has been the special broadcast on blood.
Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Hope you enjoyed it. All right, we'll catch you again for the next special release.
Namaste.